Yo, what is up, y'all? It's Cone back here again today with another video, and today I want to talk about some trades. Right now in the NBA offseason, we're in a real big lull. We're waiting on three major trades. Kevin Durant, Donovan Mitchell, and Kyrie Irving are all on the trade block, but no moves have been made, nothing's really close to happening, and it's all kind of just stale at this point. So I went back and looked through the NBA logs and found 5 trades that were terrible that you might have forgotten about. I'm not going to talk about the James Harden trade in this one because, I've been through that before, or like the Kevin Garnett Celtics Nets trade. Those have been talked about a ton. I went back and found 5 ones that were a little more low-key, so leave a like and subscribe if you do enjoy, and let's go ahead and talk about 5 NBA trades that were awful that you probably forgot about. The first trade on this list is back on draft night in 2016, when the Orlando Magic traded for Serge Ibaka from the Oklahoma City Thunder for Victor Oladipo, Domantas Sabonis, and Ersan Ilyasova. Just by reading the trade, you can probably already tell how confusing it was, and it was from the get-go. Immediately after the trade, a bunch of people were confused. Victor Oladipo had just averaged 16, 5, and 4 with 1.5 steals in his age 23 season, which isn't phenomenal, but it's pretty good. And of course, Victor Oladipo would go on to be a 2-time All-Star in Indiana before he got hurt. He was the 2018 Most Improved Player. He was first-team All-Defense, third-team All-NBA before injuries. He turned into a really good player. And then Domantas Sabonis would go on to become an All-Star by 23 years old, is already one of the best power forward/centers in the league at the age of 25, and Ersan was a really solid role player for OKC. Thunder also ended up flipping Sabonis and Victor Oladipo into Paul George down the line, and eventually flipping him into SGA, Gallinari, and the billion first-round picks that they got from the Los Angeles Clippers. So the Thunder made out like bandits in this one, and all they had to give up was Serge Ibaka, who, given, had a decent year for the Magic, averaging 15 points per game, but that was his only season in Orlando. In fact, he only played 56 games before the Magic shipped him off to Toronto for Terrence Ross and a first-round pick that turned into Andrzej Pasechniks. If you haven't heard that name before, it's because he played 2 seasons and neither of them were for the Magic. They traded him to the Wizards. And in the grand scheme of everything, trading for Serge Ibaka, which seemed like a win-now move, pairing him alongside Vucevic in the front court in that upcoming 2016-17 season, they lost 6 more games than they won the year before. So, not a good look for the Magic in what was an absolutely awful trade, giving up 2 future All-Stars for a guy that you had for 56 games, and then ending up with Terrence Ross. Not a good look for the Magic. Who knows what they would have looked like if they held on to Sabonis and Victor Oladipo for the next few seasons alongside Vucevic, Aaron Gordon, and Fournier. Maybe they would have made something there in Orlando, but we'll never know. And instead, Serge Ibaka is a Magic legend. The second trade we have on this list is back in December of 2014 when the Dallas Mavericks traded Jay Crowder, Brandon Wright, Jameer Nelson, and draft picks for Rajon Rondo and Dwight Powell from the Boston Celtics. Now, unlike the first trade, this one made a lot of sense for the Dallas Mavericks when it happened. It seemed great on paper. At the time of the trade, they were 19-8, 6th in the Western Conference, but they had an 8.5 net rating, which was the second best in the league. So it indicated that they, despite being the 6th seeded team out west, were pretty good, and adding a guy like Rajon Rondo, who is a phenomenal playmaker and a really solid defender at the point guard position, upgrading from Jameer Nelson, it made a lot of sense for this team. And for a lot of people, if you look back, many of them thought that the Dallas Mavericks could win the West after this move. The problem is, after the trade, everything went up in flames. They went 31-24 the rest of the way. They were worse offensively with Rondo on the court than off of it. And over the course of those, 55 games, they fell from the best offense in the league pre-Rondo with Jameer Nelson at the 1 to the 13th best offense. Rondo also clashed with his teammates and coach Rick Carlisle so badly that they benched him and ultimately asked him to leave during their playoff series against the Houston Rockets. They sent him home. The star point guard that they traded for, their big move that was supposed to put them over the hump, it was so bad chemistry-wise that they sent him home. And in terms of what the Celtics got back, it wasn't anything crazy, but Jay Crowder went on to become a great 3D role player for years down the line, and Brandon Wright and Jameer Nelson both had some solid moments over the course of that season, but really, Jay Crowder was the guy. Their 2 draft picks that they gave up didn't become anything special, but Rondo ultimately destroyed that Dallas team and potentially Dirk's last chance at winning a ring. Monte Ellis and Tyson Chandler would end up leaving very shortly after, and the Mavs were forced into mediocrity for the rest of Dirk's career. So, while it looked great on paper, ultimately, adding a little bit too much destroyed their chance at a championship. The fourth trade on this list is back in 2012 when the then New Jersey Nets traded their first round pick in the 2012 draft for Gerald Wallace from the Portland Trail Blazers. Now that doesn't seem like that crazy of a trade at first, but let me walk you through it. At the 2012 trade deadline, the Nets were panicking because they were one of the worst teams in the league, but they wanted to prove to their then franchise point guard Deron Williams that they wanted to win, that they were going to put talent around him because he was an upcoming free agent. So they traded their first round pick alongside Sean Williams and Mehmet Okur for Gerald Wallace, who was having a pretty solid season and ended up averaging around 15 points per game over the course of his 16 games for the Nets after the trade deadline. He played pretty well. Of course, they weren't making a playoff run because they were one of the worst teams in the league, and they gave up their draft pick. Now, they did protect it top 3, meaning that if the pick landed in the top 3 through the draft lottery, the Nets would hold on to that pick. So it was a little bit of a safety net for them, because they saw it, according to their GM at the time, that it was a 3-person draft. It was pretty weak outside of that. They said that there were 3 players in this draft that could truly change a franchise in their minds. It was Anthony Davis, Thomas Robinson, and Michael Kidd-Gilchrist. Those were the 3 guys that in their mind could change a franchise. Now, there were a lot of other great players in that draft, including one of them who the Blazers got with that Nets pick, which was not top 3, it was 7th, and they picked up Damian Lillard. An NBA 75 point guard, one of the best shooters of all time, especially at the point guard position, an incredible playmaker, multiple-time All-NBA player, multiple-time All-Star, some of the hugest clutch moments in the playoffs we've ever seen. All of that for Gerald Wallace, who, keep in mind, like I said, was on a decline, and after that season where he played decent for the last 16 games of the year, the next year, after they gave him a 4-year, $40 million contract in the offseason, which at the time was a ton of money, he ended up averaging 7 points per game the next season, and ultimately they would throw him into the insane, one of the worst trades of all time, Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett swap with the Celtics, and his contract was so bad that because of it, the Celtics asked for the Nets to throw in more unprotected draft picks, making one of the worst trades of all time even worse through this trade. So not only did they lose Dame, but they ended up making the worst trade of all time even worse. So shout out to the Brooklyn Nets for that one. And the final trade on this list is back in 2010 when the Clippers traded their unprotected first-round pick and Baron Davis for Mo Williams and Jamario Moon from the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Clippers wanted to clear up some cap space, so they dealt Baron Davis's bigger contract for Mo Williams' smaller contract so they could have the money to retain DeAndre Jordan and Eric Gordon, 2 big pieces of their young core at that point, while also bringing in Mo Williams, who had been an All-Star just a couple years prior. It was a move that made some sense. But like I said, they also gave up an unprotected first-round pick at a point in the season when they were 21-37. However, their GM Neil Olshey said that, like a trade situation we just talked about, they weren't very high on the draft that was ahead of them. Their pick ended up becoming the very first overall pick, jumping from the 8th best odds, and the Cavs took none other than someone you might know as Kyrie Irving. You know, he won Rookie of the Year, became an All-Star, an All-NBA player, and ended up hitting one of the biggest shots in NBA history to help LeBron James bring Cleveland a championship. He's also got the best handle of all time, in my opinion. So, you know, giving up a guy like him in a draft that you weren't very high on, not a great look, especially because the Clippers did end up building a solid core of Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan, and eventually brought in Chris Paul. But imagine if they had not made that deal and they had Kyrie Irving. Maybe the franchise would have had a ring by now. If you had a team of Kyrie Irving, Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan, there's a good chance at some point in those years you make it out of the Western Conference at least to go to an NBA Finals, if not win a ring. So big missed opportunity there, and another example of why you don't trade draft picks in the years that you suck. And those are the 5 trades that I put together for y'all for today's video. Let me know which of the trades you think was the worst in the comment section below, and please leave a like and subscribe if you did enjoy. It's the best way to let me know that you enjoyed the video. Let's see if we can hit 100 likes on this one. Also comment down below if you want to see more videos like this, and what is another awful trade that I forgot about in this video. I appreciate y'all watching. I will see you all later. Real One, stay back.